There is a woman sitting in a hospital parking lot at 2 a.m., staring through a foggy windshield into the empty, fluorescent-lit concrete, and she hasn't shed a single tear in 6 long months. To the outside world, she looks strong, stoic, and completely unbothered. But it is not because her life is peaceful, and it is not because she finally found some magical inner calm. It is because everything hit her all at once, a relentless tidal wave of emotional devastation that left her completely hollowed out. In a matter of months, the foundations of her entire existence simply crumbled. Her marriage fell apart in a mess of silent dinners and broken promises. Her best friend, the one person she thought would stay in her corner forever, quietly went ghost and stopped returning her texts. And when she finally turned to her own mother for comfort, bleeding out emotionally and desperate for a safe place to land, she was met with the same toxic critique she had heard her entire life, that she was just too emotional, too needy, too dramatic, and simply too much to handle. So she did the only thing a deeply sensitive person knows how to do when the world refuses to hold them. She swallowed it. She took all that overwhelming grief, all that rejection, all that burning anxiety, and she forced it down deep into her chest. She consciously learned how to shrink her presence, how to quiet her voice, and how to dim her light just to survive the people around her. She trained her heart to stop feeling, believing that if she could just turn the volume down on her emotions, she would finally be safe. And now here she sits in the freezing dark of that car at 2 a.m, wrapped in a heavy, suffocating blanket of total numbness. She is looking at her own reflection in the rearview mirror and genuinely wondering if this empty, unfeeling state means she is finally cured. She thinks that because she isn't crying, she is finally fixed. But she is not fixed. She is starving. She is emotionally suffocating under the weight of her own unexpressed life. If you have ever sat in a dark parking lot exactly like that, gripping the steering wheel with your chest aching, or if you have ever found yourself staring blankly at a bathroom floor at midnight, or sitting in a completely silent car in your own driveway, too utterly exhausted to even open the door and walk inside, then I need you to lean in and listen to me very carefully right now. What we are about to uncover is going to completely flip the script on how you understand your entire life, your past, and every single painful relationship you have ever endured. Because here is the fundamental truth that absolutely nobody told you. The intense sensitivity you spent years trying to kill, the profound depth of feeling that everyone around you labeled as a flaw, a defect, or a problem, is not your weakness. It never was. It is a highly specialized neurological gift, a rare and beautifully complex brain wiring that the vast majority of human beings will live and die without ever developing. You were never broken because you feel too much. You were broken because you live in a world that doesn't know what to do with people who feel deeply. And absolutely nobody ever taught you how to carry a gift this heavy without letting it crush you. To understand why this gift feels like a curse right now, we have to look at the actual, undeniable psychological pattern. Because this overwhelming exhaustion didn't just start yesterday. People who possess this rare ability, the ones who absorb the energy, the tension, and the unspoken trauma of a room almost as physically as if it were their own, almost always share the exact same childhood blueprint. You didn't just wake up one day feeling this way. You were wired for it from the very beginning. You grew up as a hypersensitive, deeply intuitive child who acted like an emotional weather vane for your entire household. Long before you even had the vocabulary to describe it, you were picking up on the invisible currents of adult stress. You could feel your parents' unspoken resentment, their unexpressed anger, or their quiet despair before a single word was ever spoken. You were the child who cried at sad television commercials at 5 years old, the one who felt a genuine, agonizing grief when you saw a stray animal hurt on the side of the road, and the one who could instantly tell when an adult was lying to you just by the shift in the atmosphere of the room. But instead of your family recognizing this incredible emotional intelligence and nurturing it, the world delivered one consistent, crushing, and toxic script directly to your developing mind. Stop crying. You're overreacting. You are far too sensitive. Toughen up and grow a thicker skin. Every time you showed your authentic heart, you were told that your natural response to the world was incorrect, inconvenient, and annoying. So, as a little child, you did the only thing children can do when their emotional survival is on the line. You built an internal fortress. You started to wall your heart off from the outside world. You didn't actually stop feeling because your nervous system is physically incapable of changing its fundamental architecture. But you learned to master the art of the cover-up. You learned to hide your tears, to swallow your anger, to anticipate everyone else's needs, and to camouflage your own pain to ensure that your existence never, ever inconvenienced anyone else again. And right there, in that exact moment of childhood compliance, is where your true origin wound was born. This is the deepest crack in your psychological foundation. The wound isn't the fact that you feel things deeply. The wound is the profound, subconscious shame you carry for simply existing as a deeply feeling person in a world that prefers to stay numb. When you take a massive, powerful emotional capacity and force it underground out of shame, it does not just fade away or evaporate. It goes completely rogue. Because you buried your natural defenses and learned to ignore your own internal warning signals, you end up navigating the world like an emotional sponge with absolutely zero filters. You walk into a room, a grocery store, or an office, and without even realizing it, your nervous system begins aggressively absorbing every single ounce of unexpressed anxiety, heavy anger, and quiet dread vibrating off the people around you. The most terrifying part of this dynamic is that you completely lose track of where they end and where you begin. You absorb someone else's chaotic, toxic energy, pull it deep into your own body, and format it as your own personal emotional reality. Someone sits next to you at work feeling intensely insecure, and suddenly your own chest tightens with an overwhelming sense of failure that you cannot explain. Your partner walks through the front door radiating silent, passive-aggressive rage, and your entire body immediately floods with a deep, paralyzing shame, as if you did something terribly wrong, even when you are completely innocent. You are constantly running your life on other people's toxic emotional fuel, exhausting your body to process trauma that doesn't even belong to you, all because your injured sensitivity was never given the boundaries it needs to function properly. But we need to stop right here and have an incredibly direct, radically honest conversation about this, because there is a massive danger hidden inside this lifestyle that most spiritual spaces, self-help books, and online communities will never tell you. They won't tell you because it is deeply uncomfortable and doesn't feel good to hear. But the popular modern concept of the helpless empath identity has become an absolute psychological trap. There is a quiet, highly addictive narrative that circulates in these spaces, and it goes something like this. You are a fragile, uniquely special soul, born with a pure light, and because your light shines so beautifully, you are destined to be hunted, drained, and targeted by cruel, manipulative narcissists and takers. While there are certainly toxic people in the world, the specific way this story is told leaves out the most critical piece of human psychology, and it does so at the direct expense of your future. It gives you a highly romanticized explanation for your agonizing pain, but it wraps that explanation in a victim mindset that keeps you completely paralyzed, stuck, and powerless. It tells you that your suffering is just the tragic price you have to pay for being an incredibly good, deep person, which leaves you completely dependent on the behavior of others for your own peace of mind. Let's shatter that illusion right now. Your emotional sensitivity is not just some random mystical weather event that ruthlessly happens to you from the outside. You are not a helpless, fragile glass vessel that the universe gets to randomly fill with toxic garbage and empty out at its own cruel will. You are a human being with a highly advanced physical nervous system, a distinct psychological history, and a set of ingrained behavioral patterns that you have the absolute power to reshape. When you adopt an identity that perfectly explains away your daily suffering, gives you a badge of spiritual superiority, but never actually asks you to change your habits, set hard boundaries, or look at your own enabling patterns, you are no longer on a genuine healing journey. You have simply locked yourself inside a beautiful, deeply comforting cage built out of elegant, validating words. Healing does not mean finding a poetic excuse to stay broken and vulnerable to every passing storm. True healing means realizing that because you are the one holding the sponge, you are also the one who has the absolute authority to stop soaking up everyone else's poison, step into your own agency, and finally learn how to control the powerful machinery of your own mind. To truly understand why your life keeps repeating the same painful chapters, you have to realize that your adult nervous system is currently running on deeply outdated childhood software. During the most formative years of your life, your brain acted like a supercomputer, quietly observing your environment and programming its own definitions of what love, safety, connection, and relationships actually look like. If you grew up in a home where love was conditional, where you had to earn attention by being quiet, or where you had to constantly walk on eggshells to avoid an adult's explosive temper, your developing brain coded that exact chaos as normal. To a wounded, highly sensitive child's brain, familiarity equals safety, even if that familiarity is incredibly painful. Your subconscious mind does not seek out what is healthy for you. It seeks out what it already knows how to navigate. It looks for templates it recognizes from the past because staying in familiar territory feels predictable to a survival-driven nervous system, whereas a genuinely healthy, peaceful relationship actually feels terrifyingly unpredictable and unsafe to an unhealed brain. This hidden neurobiological coding is the exact reason why you find yourself repeatedly falling head over heels for emotionally unavailable partners, or why you consistently surround yourself with friends and bosses who dismiss your feelings, manipulate your kindness, and take everything you have to give. It is why you find yourself attracted to people who require you to rescue them, fix them, or completely sacrifice your own needs just to keep them happy. You might look at your relationship history and feel like you are under some kind of cosmic curse, or that you are simply destined to be heartbroken and used by the people you love. But let's be radically direct here. This is not fate, it is not a curse, and it is not a sign that you are broken. It is pure, predictable neurobiology. You are simply projecting your childhood survival strategies onto your adult life, subconsciously picking partners who match the exact emotional unavailability of the people who raised you, all in a desperate, unconscious attempt to finally win their approval this time around. Recognizing this pattern is not about turning around and blaming yourself, and it is certainly not about feeling guilty for the painful choices you've made in the past. It is quite literally the exact opposite. This is the precise moment you get to reclaim your absolute power. Up until this very second, your brain has been automatically running a heavy, destructive background program that was installed into your psyche before you were even old enough, conscious enough, or mature enough to choose it for yourself. You were just a kid trying to survive an overwhelming environment. But you are not that helpless child anymore. The old software served its purpose back then by keeping you safe, but it is actively destroying your life today. Now that you have the awareness to look this program dead in the eye, see it for what it is, and map out exactly how it works, the illusion of fate completely shatters. You are no longer trapped in the passenger seat of your own life. You are holding the controls, and you finally get to decide whether you want to keep running this painful childhood loop, or if you are ready to press delete and write a completely new story. To truly heal your life and stop this exhausting cycle, you have to be willing to look directly at your shadow. Before your mind goes to anything mystical, abstract, or overly complicated, let's define exactly what the shadow is in plain, simple terms. Your shadow is the psychological junk drawer where you shoved every single part of yourself that you decided was unacceptable, inconvenient, or unlovable to the people around you. For highly sensitive people, this shadow isn't just a small corner of the mind, it is absolutely massive. Because you grew up being told that your natural intensity was too much, you quickly learned that the only way to belong, to be loved, and to stay safe was to split yourself in half. You put on a curated, beautifully polite mask for the world while dragging an enormous sack of buried human traits right behind you in the dark. You became the eternally giving, endlessly patient, completely unbothered saint who never makes a scene, while completely suffocating the fully rounded human being you were actually born to be. The very first thing you buried deep inside that shadow was your raw, clean, and completely justified anger. You were taught somewhere along the line that good, sensitive people don't get angry, that rage is dangerous, and that showing dissatisfaction makes you difficult or unlovable. So when people crossed your boundaries, lied to your face, or took your kindness for granted, you didn't yell. You didn't even frown. You just swallowed that hot fire and smiled through the pain. Along with your anger, you buried what the world loves to call selfishness, which is actually just the basic, healthy human right to look at your own life and say, my time matters, my emotional capacity matters, and my energy belongs to me first. Instead of honoring that right, you buried it under thick, suffocating layers of compulsive people-pleasing, becoming addicted to rescuing everyone else while completely abandoning yourself. To make matters worse, you forcefully silenced your own sharp, analytical gut judgment. When your intuition screamed at you that a person was toxic, unsafe, or manipulative, you consciously chose to shut your own instincts down. You over-intellectualized their bad behavior, giving endless, exhausting, toxic excuses to people who deserve to be kicked out of your life, all so you could maintain the comfortable illusion that you are an endlessly compassionate healer. But here is the brutal psychological reality of the human mind. The things you push underground do not die. They do not evaporate, and they do not disappear just because you pretend they aren't there. Instead, they sit in the dark, mutate, and start aggressively operating against you without your conscious permission. That raw, justified anger you refused to express didn't go away. It turned inward, attacking your physical body and transforming into chronic, low-level anxiety, unexplainable panic attacks, and a constant sense of impending doom. That healthy self-preservation you labeled as selfish and tried to kill didn't vanish. It curdled into a bitter, heavy resentment that slowly poisons your closest relationships, making you secretly despise the very people you are aggressively trying to save. And that gut judgment you silenced didn't stop trying to protect you. It just left you completely defenseless, repeatedly walking blindfolded into traps set by the exact same types of users and takers. You think you are being a good person by keeping these traits locked away, but you are actually just fueling the exact internal war that is tearing your nervous system apart from the inside out. That is why you need to completely reframe how you look at your worst moments. That midnight breakdown you had in the car, that sudden panic attack that brought you to your knees, or that overwhelming wave of total numbness that left you unable to function, wasn't a random failure of your mental health. It wasn't a sign that you are broken, weak, or losing your mind. It was your psyche staging a violent, desperate coup against the fake life you've been living. It was your soul completely rejecting the curated, people-pleasing, endlessly self-sacrificing persona that you have been performing for the world at the expense of your own survival. When life breaks you wide open in those dark moments, the walls of that beautiful, suffocating cage finally start to crack. Through those exact fractures, for the very first time in your life, the shadow begins to leak out into the light. You are finally forced to feel the burning rage you've been hiding, the intense hunger to be seen and valued for your own sake, and the fierce, protective, and boundaried version of you that is capable of looking a manipulator dead in the eye and saying, "No," with every single cell of your biology. That terrifying collapse is not the end of you. It is your becoming. It is the moment the fragile, compliant child steps down, so the real, fierce, integrated adult can finally take the wheel and breathe. So what do you do now with this raw, newly uncovered awareness? The choice before you is no longer about learning how to feel more. You already feel everything, and you have survived the absolute worst of it, completely unprotected and without a map. The real work begins when you choose to transition from being a passive victim of your environment to becoming the active author of your own nervous system. It means waking up every single day and refusing to offer your sacred emotional energy as a free resource for broken people to exploit. It means standing firm in your own shoes, looking at the storms raging around you, and knowing exactly what belongs to the room and what belongs to you. You are standing at the absolute threshold of a completely different life, and the numbness you have been running from is actually the best data point you will ever receive. It is your body telling you that the old, unprotected way of carrying your gift is officially over. If you are ready to finally stop apologizing for the depth of your soul and start learning how to weaponize your sensitivity into an unshakable, quiet power, then it is time to take the first real step. Stop trying to figure this out alone in the dark, repeating the same exhausting childhood loops until you burn out completely. Hit the subscribe button right now. Drop a comment below sharing the exact moment you realized you were running on someone else's emotional fuel. And join this community of deeply feeling people who are actively learning how to master their wiring. The darkness didn't happen to destroy you. It happened to force you into becoming exactly who you were always meant to be. You are still here, breathing and searching for answers. Start right there.